Good morning. I'm Alessandro Bagnini, Product Manager of BTS. Welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to talk about the risk of fall, especially in elderly and patients with neurological disease. And we will talk about the application of our innovative product called GWALK and its quantitative evaluation of the risk of fall. We all know that falls are a huge problem for elderly people and people affected by neurological disease for three main reasons. First, because falls have a great incidence among older subjects. The 70% of the injuries caused by accident are related to falls, and over 90% of fractures are due to falls in older subjects. Falls are also a problem among people with neurological pathologies, such as people affected by Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and stroke, with the probability of fall more than 50%. Second, falls have a great psychological impact on the patient. Falling generates in subject a fear of further falling, resulting in a reduction of physical and social activities, often lead to further dependence and a decline in overall quality of life. Third, falling generates a great economical impact for this clinical structure. Let's consider that in the US, the cost of fall each year is approximately $20 billion. Falls are a common problem for different kinds of pathologies, such as for frail elderly, for people affected by cerebral palsy, post-trauma, people suffering Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, or stroke, or other pathologies. In all these pathologies, it's very important to perform a multifactorial falling risk evaluation. But why? Because the most effective intervention to prevent fall is a multifactorial falling risk assessment. So to evaluate the risk, allow reducing the risk itself and consequently to improve the quality of life for the patient by reducing the rate of injuries. Increase the care for quality of the structure by reducing the rate of the accident inside the structure, by performing fast intervention. And so, an adequate falling risk assessment managed to reduce the incidence of fall and consequently to reduce the cost for the structure. And for this reason, national and international guidelines suggest to evaluating the risk of falls. In order to evaluate in the best way the fall risks, it's necessary to understand that falls are a complex phenomenon. The fall risk factors are several, such as the age, a past history of fall, incontinence, visual defect, psychological status, fear of falling, deformity of foot, postural instability, and finally motor limitation. But in this context, the literature affirms that the gait and balance risk factors are the most studied and the factor who best predict the risk of fall. For this reason, usually the clinics evaluate the risk of fall. The traditional falling risk assessment are questionnaire or scale, for example, the Tineti scale, Berg balance scale, Moore scale, or other. Another standard test for the falling risk evaluation is the time up and go test. What is the time up and go test? The time up and go is a test who measure the total, by using a stopwatch, the total time required for the patient to get up from a chair, walk a meter, make a turn, and go back to the original sitting position. The test usually evaluates the total time required to complete the test, but it is made up by different subphases. For example, the sit to stand, the tour, the walk, the stand to sit, and each subphases could be considered a test itself, as they are tasks commonly performed during daily routine. By evaluating the time up and go test using a stopwatch, we lose important information on the subphases for characterizing the patient situation. So we can consider the evaluation a partial evaluation. And in addition, we have intra-operator variability and inter-operator variability. New technologies, as our product, the GWALK, for the digital quantification of the movement analysis, allow the instrumented evaluation of the time up and go test. By performing the time up and go test with these technologies, the measurements obtained are objective, complete, reliable, fast, because the report is automatically generated in few seconds. And again, the test allows to obtain a lot of information useful in characterizing the patient situation. For example, many variables that could be obtained using the GWALK are related to the risk of fall. For example, the time up and go walk time, the time up and go mid rotation time, or other variables. So, by using the GWALK during the time up and go test, we can assess the patient risk of fall in a detailed, instrumental, and automatic way. Now, just a few words about the technologies. The GWALK is a revolutionary product for the movement analysis. It is a portable and wearable device made up by great hardware technologies in detail for inertial platform made up by triaxial accelerometer, triaxial magnetometer, and triaxial gyroscope, and advanced software algorithm, joined together, allowing a gait and precise gait and movement quantification. The GWALK in detail allows the quantification of gait and of other clinical tests, including the time up and go test. And in few seconds, immediately, allow to obtain a complete clinical report. For example, this is the complete clinical report of the time up and go test you can obtain using the GWALK. As we can see, it's possible to obtain the time up and go total duration, the first line called analysis duration, a risk of fall assessment. This index is based on cutoff score presented in literature on the time up and go total time. A functional mobility skill, again based on cutoff score present in literature on the total time. We can obtain all the sub-phases duration, so the sit to stand duration, the walking forward duration, mid-turning, return gait duration, final turning duration, and stand to sit duration. The acceleration during the sit to stand and stand to sit. In particular, these parameters are very important for characterize the stand to sit and sit to stand movement of the patient. For example, if a patient, typically the elderly, fall down during the stand to sit, the acceleration are very high, and you can see in an objective way. Then it's possible to assess the velocity, the angular velocity of the turning, and also the trunk flex extension. In fact, in the page it's possible to see the last two graphs. The graph represents the angle of the flexion and the angle of the extension during the sit to stand, the yellow graph, and the stand to sit, the green graph. Now, to better understand the potential of the system in characterize the falling risk and the situation of the patient, let's present two clinical cases. The first one is a man of 71 years old with transtibial amputation. To determine if the patient is or not at risk of fall, we perform the time up and go test on the patient. The time of the analysis duration obtained is 28.93. So, according with this author, Detect all, to identify a cutoff score for these pathologies at 19 seconds, this patient is at risk. And the software automatically provides you this information when you select the pathologies. Again, the functional mobility of the patient is semi-independent, but now let's try to characterize in the more detailed way the patient situation by looking at time up and go sub-phases. Now, it's immediately possible to see that in percentage of the total duration of the examination, the forward gait and the return gait have a long duration. So this patient have a particular problem during the walk phases. But concerning the sit to stand and stand to sit, the duration of this phase referred to the total duration of the analysis is reduced, so they don't this phase is not problematic for the patient itself. Now let's go to the second example. This patient is a male, a man of 67 years old with transfemoral amputation. To determine if this patient is at risk of fall, we performed a time up and go test. The total analysis duration obtained are 16.51 seconds. So, according to the same author as before, who identified the cutoff score for these pathologies at 19 seconds, the patient is have a low risk. And also in this case, and also for the functional mobility, the patient is independent. But also in this case, let's look at the time up and go subphases. In this case, we can note that the patient spend more time during the turning respect the total duration of the examination. So, for this patient, the problematic task, the most difficult task, are the two turning, the mid turning and the end turning. Also in this case, the sit to stand and stand to sit have a quite reduced time. So we can immediately understand how this device is useful in characterizing the patient situation, and we could immediately understand that by performing the time up and go test using a stopwatch, we lose important information able to characterize the patient situation. And again, by using system like the GWALK for the time up and go quantification, we can compare the patient situation pre and post specific treatment by obtaining precise and accurate information that could be compared. We spoke about the GWALK and the risk of fall, but the GWALK do not only provide the time up and go test. It's a device who also allow the quantification of the work for the work quality assessment of the turn, run, and jumps, and of the 6-minute work test. So allow the quantification of different clinical tests. And for example, tests such as the walk provide important parameters, for example, the velocity of the asymmetry, that again are fundamental information for characterize the patient risk of falls. In conclusion, falls represent a major problem for people affected by different pathologies. Considering the increasing age of the population of the industrial nation, this problem will become more and more important in the next years. The quantitative falling risk evaluation is fundamental to prevent the falling risk, to prevent falls, and to reduce the rate of the falls. So, in this context, the GWALK allows to characterize the patient situation and to evaluate the patient in a very precise and detailed way by providing quantitative information in a very fast and simple way, reproducible information that allow to better quantify the patient situation and consequently to improve the quality of life of your patient. Thank you for your attention.